Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Jagger. I am the one of the co-founders of Casting Calls America, and excited today to be coming to you live, both through Facebook and on Access Sacramento, to be talking with actor Tom Sizemore and book publisher Charles Lago about Doug Hutchison's book, Flushing Hollywood. So we're really excited about having this conversation because it's as Casting Calls America Network, we're excited to bring opportunities to actors, whether they be new actors just starting out or veteran actors that have been doing this forever. And it's so important to be able to understand not just about kind of the craft but also the business of Hollywood or of the acting industry, and also of kind of knowing the underbelly side as well, and what can happen to people and some of the impacts that the culture and the environment of Hollywood create. And so I think we have a unique opportunity to have that discussion tonight. And so we have Tom Sizemore on, there's two things that people can say about Tom Sizemore. One, he's an amazing actor who has delivered some of the most memorable and amazing performances in some of the most amazing films that have been out in the last 20 years. And you can also say that he's had some controversy and some personal challenges that have affected him. And so regardless of if you think he's the most amazing actor, but have challenges with him otherwise, doesn't matter. The point is that he's here to have the conversation. And you can definitely say that Tom Sizemore has had an impact on Hollywood. You can also say that Hollywood has had an impact on Tom Sizemore. So I'm thrilled and so pleased that Tom was willing to join us to have this, open and frank conversation about not just his side of what has happened in his life, but really what we're talking about is Doug's book and what Doug has gone through, and who better to understand kind of this underbelly side than someone who's been through it himself, worked with a lot of the same actors, gone through a lot of the same challenges, not all the same challenges, different challenges and not the same challenges. But we're excited to have the conversation. So here's the connection. So both Doug and Tom have the same manager and publisher, and that's Charles, and who we're going to also talk with this evening. So that's the connection and why we're having Tom be part of this conversation, because they have that connection. And I think that's important to know ahead of time in having this conversation. So anyhow, enough about me. Doesn't matter what I'm saying. What I really want to do is I want to bring Mr. Tom Sizemore on. So excuse me as I go lean into the camera below here so I can get my program to bring Tom on. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Brian, it's great to be here. The only thing that my computer went on the blink and my printer, so I don't have Charles's introduction. Can people see me?
Yes, you look great. You look great.
But I don't have my intro for Charles. Thank you. I've never met you, but you look well yourself.
Well, thank you.
So I don't know what I should do if I go back to my email and I can't be on TV.
Well, I'm happy to help out here a little bit then. Like I was kind of doing a little bit of an introduction in explaining that one of the connections that you and Doug have is the fact that you both work with Charles, and Charles is the publisher of the book. And so as his manager, and I think there's some interesting things too that you guys will get into as far as some other people that Charles manages that have a part of this conversation. But I think just kind of going off of what the conversation that we're planning on having is that you've worked with Charles for how many years now?
Oh, I've worked with Charles 12 years, and it's amazing that he worked with me and with Doug Hutchison reading the book. I mean, Doug he's a complicated person. I mean, Charles is a saint. For when I was reading the book the second time through in the last 2 days, I was just amazed at how difficult Doug is. And as I was thinking about how difficult he was, I was thinking about how difficult things have been, and I can be at times, and how Charles was. I didn't know he was simultaneously going through this whole thing with Doug Hutchison.
Well, that's an interesting viewpoint on it. Well, I don't want to leave Charles out of this conversation. Let's get me off, because let's have the interesting people talk. So we'll just bring Charles on, and you guys can have this conversation. So I'm going to step out, and I'll let you introduce Charles, just at least introducing the the man, the myth, the legend himself, and let you guys have a conversation. So I'll be in the background if you guys need me. Otherwise, everybody watching, enjoy the conversation.
Charles,
Tom,
did you hear me?
I did, and I can't believe that you need my introduction written down on paper.
Well, I don't know the Cal Corp,
Cal Cap Publishing. I'll help you there, but you just do your own introduction. Let's see what you come up with.
Charles Lago is a man who wears many hats. He's relocated to Sacramento recently and heads up Cal Cap Publishing, as well as he's getting a theater started up there, as he did in San Diego years ago. He's been in the arts a great many years, and he's managed some of the more difficult and challenging actors in his career, and I'm one of them, as is Mr. Hutchison. And for full disclosure, Charles met me after I got out of prison, and he should be given an award for taking me on after such a difficult period of my life. And I thought the difficult days were behind me, but they weren't. And we were Charles, we got a lot of things done. We got me moving in the right direction, but we still had some bumps I had to go through to come out now a sober, not insane actor like Doug Hutchison. When I read the book, I was astonished. And I know that when you were at the galleys, that when he wrote, I wonder if the reader's wondering if just one of these sentences that I've written could ruin.
First, Tom, we should introduce the book. So the book is
called
Hollywood, Fake News, Fake Boobs.
Fake News, Fake Boobs. Flushing Hollywood, Fake News, Fake Boobs.
And it's Doug Hutchison's memoir, so it's his biography. And a few years ago, you wrote your own biography.
I wrote my own biography, and
well, I can't believe I made it out of here alive, or something like that, right?
I by some miracle, I made it out of here alive.
Right, that's it.
By some miracle, Doug wrote this book and hasn't been really attacked by some of the actors that he writes negatively about. I didn't write negatively about any actors. I by and large had a good time with the actors. But when he says that he said these negative things about actors and the way he runs down and tells on, like, just because your agent develops a drug problem, and that's why you don't need to go into detail that he was running a cocaine trafficking. I mean, Doug discloses a little too much about some of these people who, when you're making a movie and you're working with a luminary, a famous person like Tom Hanks, Charles, I mean, just by virtue of just intuitively that he doesn't want any of these things revealed that he's doing and talking about while you're making the movie. I mean, the only thing you're supposed to talk about is the work, and not does his shit stink and how much alcohol. I don't know what Doug was trying to do.
Well, let me tell you how the book came about, because maybe that'll make people understand. So, as you know, I manage Doug as well as you, and I manage several people. So one day I said to Doug, Tom, well, Doug asked me about your book, and he asked me, how did your book come about? So I told him that I suggested to you that maybe you put your life down. You're making everybody seasick, Tom.
I'm going to stop right here.
By moving. So I told him about your book. I told him you got a publishing deal. And those days are gone now. In the publishing world, you don't get the kind of deals that you got. So he started writing the book, and he wrote the book in two parts. Part one was his early life, theater, getting into movies, living in New York, and then working with all the people that he talks about and saying not very nice things about a lot of the people. And we'll get into some of those. And then the second part of the book was his marriage to Courtney Stodden. So we'll get into that as well. So that's how the book came about. He wrote the book. He sent me the manuscript. I said to him, Doug, this is pretty out there. This is not what memoirs are. And he said, I don't care. I want to tell my story. And as a result of that, this book came out.
Did he?
And all in between the pages there.
So let me understand this. He didn't have a ghostwriter. He had no one, not as told to anyone. He wrote by himself.
He wrote every word. He wrote every single word.
and he edited it. He didn't have an editor when.
No, we had an editor. I found him an editor. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it was a copy editor, not an editor that changed anything. Just punctuation, spelling, that kind of thing.
And he did not take your suggestion about.
I told him I would give him no editorial criticism or anything. I said, whatever you put, Doug, is what we're going to publish.
Look, I found the book fascinating. It was kind of like watching a guy slowly cut off his own head. I have a lot in common with Doug Hutchison in certain ways. I'm from Michigan, too. He was from Warren, Michigan. It's like 6 miles from where I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And I moved to New York. He moved to New York. I moved to L.A. He moved to L.A. And then there's something interesting about why do actors, Charles? I mean, you've kind of made almost it's almost part of your je ne sais quoi. You represent troubled actors who.
So why do actors get into trouble? So you
know
a little bit about that. So why don't you tell us?
I mean, I was going to say, why do talented? Why don't I tell?
Why do talented actors? Why do actors who are at the top of their game get themselves into trouble?
Well, I think it's interesting. Well, there's of course everybody knows that there's a lot of temptation in the world, and they probably think out here in LA it's exponentially more, and it is. There's far more girls, there's far more drugs, and see, Doug and I had it a bit different. I mean, I started. If you give a guy who's 31 years old $1 million, and then he knows he's going to be doing another, like I would make whatever I would make. Let's say, for argument's sake, I made $600,000 on a movie, and I get another movie I'm going to do in 3 months for $500,000, and those 3 months I have nothing to do but sit in my condo in Los Angeles, and I'm 31 years old, and all I have to do is show up for this. Well, that's when a lot of the things with me started to go sideways. You're in a town with a great many beautiful people and a permissiveness, and for some reason, actors, especially actors that are considered stars, people want to give them things, and they want to give them things, and they want to build them up, and they want to almost like, I call it reflected fame, get around the person and they'll give anything to be around them. And if what you want is a Coca-Cola, you get a Coca-Cola. If what you want is an 8-ball of cocaine, you get an 8-ball of cocaine. And and if you have when I was going through the first blushes of stardom and finding these are the other darker elements in the city, I thought I was just augmenting my fun. I didn't think I was. I thought I could just put it down and stop. And I found out I couldn't. Later on, of course. There's something. He says something in the book that's I think it's just true of human beings, in that when things are going well, you have more people around you. When you make mistakes or screw up, like he did, when he fired Mila Jovanovic from that movie he wanted to direct, I was shocked that he was shocked that she was angry about the fact that he wasn't going to take her advice to play the lead opposite her when she was hot as a pistol, the new it girl, and just give up the directing reins, but star in the movie opposite her. He couldn't. I didn't think he made it clear to her. He didn't come across. He made it clear to her that the directing was his dream, and he had to direct it as well as act in it. He just took the information that her people and she wanted him to hire a director, and just because it was the first time he would be a first-time director, and she was at a very delicate part of her career, and just star in the movie with me. No, he just goes off and fires her, and then he's shocked that he can't get anyone else interested.
Right. He tells stories about a lot of people. He tells stories about Leonardo DiCaprio, Samuel L. Jackson, Thomas Jane.
That was shitty. What he said about Leo was straight shitty. And what he said. Now listen, I want to say something. I enjoyed the heck out of that book.
Right.
I
No, the book is very entertaining.
and he's
I think here's what I think about the book. It's very well written. It's entertaining. It's funny. And as someone, look, I work in that world. I've met a lot of actors, a lot of them thankfully through you. I've met a lot of famous people. I always tell people, do not want to meet your heroes because you'll be shocked when you meet them. So it doesn't surprise me, a lot of the things that he says, but I was a little stunned at some of the things he said. Certainly someone like Sean Penn, who has a lot of power in Hollywood.
To say that Sean is an eccentric, drunken pig and a serial philanderer was just career Harry Carey.
Why don't you tell everybody the story? Now, you worked with Tom Hanks. I've heard that Tom Hanks is probably the nicest actor in Hollywood.
He might be the nicest person on earth.
Right.
He's in that.
So why don't you tell everybody the Tom Hanks story?
My Tom Hanks story, or
no, his Doug's in the book.
Okay, well, he got cast in My Green Mile, which he had to fight for, and he had to convince Frank Darabont.
The Green Mile,
yeah. In a plum part opposite Tom and the late Mr. Duncan. And anyway, they're doing the read through, the table read before they start shooting, and they get halfway through and they break for not lunch, for a laboratory break, and he's about to take a piss when he looks down and he sees the shoes, and he realizes those are the shoes that Tom Hanks was wearing, and his pants are around his shoes. So Doug starts to take his time picking his pee and proceeds to kind of like snoop and spy on Tom Hanks's bowel movement, and he's shocked when the bathroom starts to fill up with the turgid smells of a bowel movement, and he has the revelation that Tom Hanks's shit stinks just like his. Everyone, he's just another person. And you know what? I wanted to say this to Doug. His shit may stink like ours, but he's not just another person because his shit stinks. He's still a magnificently special person, a special actor, and you know.
So I would say that you've got a lot of iconic movies, but Saving Private Ryan for sure is probably up there. I mean, Heat is probably up there, Black Hawk Down, but Private Ryan, I think a lot of people definitely. I know when I've been out with you in airports and when we've traveled around, most people, I love you in Private Ryan. So you obviously worked very closely with Tom Hanks. Like, how did you find Tom Hanks?
I spent 4.5, almost close to 5 months with him, 6 days a week, sometimes up to 16 hours a day, never less than 12. And I found him to be a magnificently humble, talented, tireless ambassador for just good behavior and creative, and the joy of creativity, and his ability to keep a movie set. I mean, I started some movies myself, and I thought Tom was like a great quarterback. I mean, he knew the temperature of the cast and the crew. He knew how to work Steven and knew Steven's moods, and he just steered. He was like a great captain of
and Steven would be Steven Spielberg.
Yes, yeah. And he just steered the ship with a steady, sure hand. And to do that, you have to pay attention to other people, remember people's names, and but it never seemed like he was doing it or politically doing this sound thing. It was just his nature. And he was just a great leader of our cast and our crew, and he made that movie, without, you could say without Tom, without Steve, without everybody, but Tom especially made that movie magnificent to me because I thought his performance was so wonderful, and I ended up kind of falling for him as a human, And
when you worked with him, did you think his poop stink?
Well, I never had the luck that Doug did and being present for a bowel movement.
So another actor that Doug worked with, I'm not sure in the book, does he talk about Val Kilmer? I can't remember.
Yes, talks about Val far too much too, and he says things he shouldn't say.
Now, you worked with Val Kilmer, right, in the Red Planet?
I worked with Val twice. I worked with Val on Heat and Red Planet.
Oh, that's right, Heat. And he worked with him on Salt and Sea.
Yes.
And I think they were opposite each other.
Yes.
What did you say about Val in the book? I can't remember.
Well, he at first he thinks that Al's one of the. He thinks Val has the same kind of talent that Marlon Brando has, and he's going to the great Hall of Fame in the sky of great actors. And when he meets Val and they start rehearsing, he's taken aback by Val's eccentricities and his seemingly meandering trains of thought about creativity by saying, "Listen, I'm yellow and you're orange, and together we're purple." And if he had just taken a little bit more time to spend with, I mean, Val's just kind of goofing around and trying to have fun. I mean, he's not really. I thought Doug was quick to particularly with the people I think he almost liked better than he liked going in. He was quick to dismiss them as dismiss Val as some eccentric screwball when he's not an he's not.
How did you find? So Heat was the first film you did with him, right?
I did, yeah. When I did Heat with Val,
and that is before he did Batman.
Before he did Batman, yes. Right. After I think his two best performances, Doc Holliday in Tombstone and Jim Morrison in The Doors. Now Heat was directed by Michael Mann, who has great authority, and it starred, of course, two of the titans of the 20th century actors in movies, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. So on that, and when I started Heat, Val already had a reputation as being an extremely, I don't know if you recall the 90s, Val was probably written about the most as the most troubled and troublemaking on a set actor in the show business. And but on Heat, we had a great time, but I found out 2 years later when I did Red Planet that the only reason he behaved on Heat and was a gentleman was because he couldn't get away with that shit in front of De Niro and Pacino and Michael Mann. So the Heat experience was with Val was a great one, and the Red Planet experience with Val was turned into a true nightmare. He ended up taking out a restraining order against me, which prevented us from working for 2 days because I couldn't come within 6 feet of him.
And why did he do that?
I'll never.
Hang on, let me get this right. You're working on a very high budget movie, Red Planet. And you're in Australia, right?
$8 million budget.
And you're in Australia.
We shot in Aqaba, Jordan for 2.5 months first.
So you're in the middle of shooting, and he takes out a restraining order against his co-lead.
On the other lead, we're on every page together.
And why would he do that?
Well, okay, like I said, we started shooting the movie in Aqaba, Jordan, and we shot there for 3 months, and it was in the shade. It was probably 112 degrees, and we're in these huge costumes, these leather, astronaut suits. Anyway, and then we do that, and that's the hot Mars, and then we end up walking through Mars. Terrence Stamp, Val, myself, Simon Baker, and Benjamin Bratt, and we walked to Cold Mars, which was Coopapiti, South Australia. And in Coopapiti, South Australia, now we're going on our 4th month. Same crew, people are getting worn out. And Val started to not come out of his trailer, sometimes a half hour, sometimes an hour. He just became difficult, and he started treating the crew poorly. And I don't want to go through all the little, things that happen.
It's safe to say you, in your own way, told him to.
The breaking point was we were in this cave shooting this scene where we're supposed to be freezing. And they got ready a little bit quicker, and they said, "Okay, we're ready to roll. We're ready to roll. Okay, cigarettes out. Everybody get ready." And Val was smoking a cigarette, and the prop girl, this 18-year-old Australian girl, stepped forward to get Val's cigarette, and he flicked it at her, and it hit her in the shoulder area, and the red butt of the cherry of the cigarette went all over, and she was like really scared, and she was going to cry, and it was just instinct. I got up and I hit him really hard. And, Not in the face.
Oh, I didn't know you actually hit him.
Oh, Charles, stop it. You do too. No, I hit him. Stop it. You're a good actor, though. I hit him in the chest. I was in my right mind. I knew not to hit him in the face. He's an actor, and he
Right.
has in a movie.
You got to keep actors pretty.
Yeah. So I hit him in the chest.
He took out a restraining order against you?
Well, I hit him pretty hard. He fell down and he couldn't get up. He wouldn't get up. I don't know. And then they had to break this. The set had to break. And then that evening he went out and took a restraining order. So the next morning my assistant comes to my room, Carol does, and she says, "Geez, we're not going to work, but you have an interview with the Australian police."
So
Mark came.
So what Doug says about Val, do you agree with what he says or no?
Well, I think there's some more color here. I think Val's eccentric. There's no doubt about it. I think Val's a great actor. There's no doubt about it. Is he nuts? Is he speaking in gobbledygook? No, he's a very measured, maybe a measured maniac, sociopath, but a harmless one, a talented one, charming. Yeah, I mean, listen.
So moving on from Val, have you worked with Samuel L. Jackson?
Fortunately, no. I'm kidding. I mean, I'm going to be working with him, I hope, on this movie. Forget about it. I've heard that Sam I have heard for a long time that Sam is a great actor to work with, but he's moody.
So what does Doug?
Well, he makes Sam out. Can you hear me? I lost the sound for a second.
Okay, what does Doug talk about Samuel L. Jackson in the book?
He says that Samuel's he calls him the biggest prick in Hollywood history, and the biggest asshole, and he insinuates he's a racist. Apart from that, he doesn't say anything bad about him. Every black person in the book's a racist, okay, against white people. Ving Rhames, who's a very dear friend of mine, who I've known for almost close to 35 years.
I've lost his name. He played Ray Charles.
Yeah, Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx. Have you worked with Jamie Foxx?
No, but I know him well, and I don't know him to be a racist, but I mean he says in the book that Jamie doesn't want. He thinks that black women and black men and white women don't belong married, and then he proceeds to have sex with a bunch of them in front of Doug. I mean, he thinks they're having sex. They look like they're going to. And
where are you going, Tom? Where are you going? Are you going?
I went to the bathroom to get my cigarettes.
Oh, okay.
In my phone. That's why I'm going to set it down now, and hopefully we can get this thing to stop altogether. I think I have a system now. Here, this is going to work. All right, here we go.
I do believe you know Sean Penn, right?
Yeah.
Now, Sean Penn, I think, gets the most virulent attacks from Doug in his book. Now, he worked very, very closely with Sean Penn in I Am Sam. How do you find Sean Penn?
One point, we're really close friends. I find Sean to be an inspiring person to be around all the time. He's a movie-loving, hard-working actor and director. I don't find him to be the overbearing, Doug says, and I don't really want to repeat what some of the things he said about Sean, had to do with his offset activities. And, I think that Doug spends too much time thinking about what these people are doing in their private life. I mean, all that matters in a movie is what happens between action and cut. And of course, you want to be courteous and a good person to be with. You're part of a group. You got a one for one for all. You got to work together, and courtesy and being decent and almost magnanimous with one another is what's called for is today. And Sean is those things. Maybe with some actors, he says things and does things that are a bit, out there. But
I think what Doug forgets, I'm not sure. It's been a while since I read the book. Obviously, the book's been in play for 2 years, and it's coming out this month.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure. But here's the story, and Doug's told me this, and this is common knowledge in Hollywood. On the set of I Am Sam is about a mentally challenged. Doug plays a mentally challenged person, and he's in a home, I think, right? He's in a home with other mentally challenged, and I think the people who played the other mentally challenged actors were really mentally challenged, although they could act.
Yes.
Well, Doug took it upon himself one night. They were off the next day to take 2 or 3 of them to a strip club in the town that they were filming.
The crazy girl.
Now, these poor guys, they've never even. I mean, can you imagine taking, these people to who have led a fairly sheltered life all their life?
Well, they'd never.
And then all of a sudden, you take them to a strip club. Well, when Sean Penn found out, obviously he went ballistic, and that's what happened. And as a result, Doug decided to say what he says about Sean Penn. And that's how that story came about. And he goes into a lot of detail in the book.
How it reads, too. It reads like sour grapes from Doug.
Yeah.
I don't know what he was thinking. Look, I don't want to run down Doug Hutchison. I think he's a wonderful actor who's made some rather ill-advised choices. But that one was really out there. Like, what was he thinking, taking these 2 gentlemen who've never been around naked people or adult people to a place as risque, as out there as Crazy Girls? I don't know what was in his mind. Yeah, well, Tom, listen, what was in your mind when you did some of the wild things you did? It just happens. That's true.
So there's 2 others. We'll talk about 2 others. So the first one would be David Duchovny.
They shouldn't have said that.
So for people who don't know, Doug was in 1 or 2 episodes of The X-Files. And David Duchovny obviously was the lead. So why don't you tell us about David Duchovny, the story about? But remember this, we're on television here, so don't go crazy.
I've known David Duchovny since New York City, circa 1985, and he taught English at Yale University as a part-time job. He's an incredibly bright guy. In any event, they're up in Vancouver shooting the first episode of X-Files. And he invites Doug to dinner. So he goes by David's room, and the room's really austere and nice, except that there's this one area where there's a really comfortable chair.
Well, let's be careful here. That story. You have to water it down for television.
Okay. He has a chair and some Kleenexes all kind of in this one corner, and Doug goes, What's that all about? And David says, that's my
you can use the real word.
Masturbation. That's my masturbation spot. That's my. That's bad enough, but this is worse. And then Doug notices there's another strange article. There's a watch on the computer. And Doug says, "What's the watch about?" And he goes, "Oh, the hotel. If you stop watching the movie 5 minutes before the end, you don't get charged for it."
Right. A porn film, right? A porn film. So at the beginning we said
Vader is what he's saying.
At the beginning we said that Doug's book, it's well written, but it's very funny. Those stories. If you're not David Duchovny and you're reading those stories, they're very funny stories.
I think this is too much.
The other person that you know very well, and he speaks not very well of, is Thomas Jane. Now, a lot of people know Thomas Jane from the HBO show Hung.
Yeah.
And what are some of his movies? You know him very well.
He was in the shark movie, with LL Cool J. He's Stephen King's personal actor now. He was he was the first Punisher in The Punisher. The shark movie was his.
Punisher, I think,
he was in HBO's movie.
Yeah, but Hung, I think, put him. And I know. Obviously, I've known you a long time. You are very close to Thomas Jane.
Yeah, he's one of my best friends.
So what did you think of what Doug, well, why don't you tell us what Doug says in the book about Thomas Jane? Well, what did Doug work with him in? Oh, it was a movie, wasn't it?
Movie whose name, it doesn't matter what the name is. It doesn't matter. No one's seen it. After they all come together. I believe it's in Vancouver again, and the director takes the cast, the leads, and the first assistant director and the immediate important crew to dinner for dinner and drinks. And Tom orders 1, 2, 3 bottles of red wine and proceeds to drink them all his dinner. When his dinner comes, he says, I'm not hungry, and orders a bottle of scotch. Polishes off an entire fifth of scotch until he not only can't he talk, he can't walk. And they don't think he can hear. So they have to physically carry him out. Oh, God. And then 2 days later, well, that day on the set, Doug said, how do you feel? And Tom said, well, if I just keep drinking, I'm not bad. So when I stop, things get bad. So 2 days later, I guess he stopped because he doesn't come to work.
I have to say, when I met Thomas Jane with you a few times, and I've certainly spoken to him, we were going to do a project together, Honest Thief, and I had many conversations with Tom. He was going to direct it at the time. Do you remember?
Yeah.
So I talked to Thomas Jane many times, and I've met him with you. I never, ever found him like that. I actually went to the set of Hung a couple of times, and I actually never found him. That was very alien to me when I read that. That's not the Thomas Jane I know. But who knows? Maybe then he was.
I've never seen Tom drunk, and I haven't.
Right.
Now, I understand he's had some problems once in a while, but that seemed extreme. And I've seen Sean drink, but I've never seen Sean out of control drunk either.
Right.
And wasn't fortunate enough to smell Tom Hanks' shit. So I don't know the veracity and the truth of what all these things he also runs down Molly Ringwald and Andrew McCarthy, which I think was kind of a low blow. Right. Andrew, difficult time, and
well, listen, I have to say, when I read the man, Doug wrote the book in 2 parts, and we'll get to the second part in a moment.
Second part is I can't even talk.
When I read the first part, and he hadn't written the second part, I called him and I said, Doug, look, are you sure that you want to publish this book? Because I just don't see how you're going to move on from this. These are A-list actors. These are very powerful people. And he was adamant. He said, no, this is the truth. And this is what I want to say in the book. So that certainly gives us a flavor of the first half of the book. And obviously, before he talks about the actors, he talks about his time in New York doing theater. Now, I know that's how you started, right? You started in New York doing theater.
And he runs down William H. Macy, who directed him in his first play.
Right.
He got everybody.
But did you relate to his life in New York, struggling as a theater actor? Did you relate to that, given that that's how you started?
Well, I started that way, but it only went on for like a year before I did Lock Up and then Heart and Souls. So my we'll call it my apprenticeship was not as lengthy as Doug's. But what Doug was experiencing there, I experienced the exact same thing, but not for as long of a time.
Right.
Yeah, but
I don't know if you want to say it here, and I'm going to be cryptic in case you don't. But when you were in New York and you lived, as a struggling actor, you had a girlfriend, and you lived together for some time. Do you want to tell us who that girlfriend is, or no? Well, you have to think about it that long. It's probably no.
Well, Edie Falco.
Yeah. Edie Falco from The Sopranos.
She was one of the most wonderful people and actors I've ever met to this day.
And she was your girlfriend for a couple of years. You lived together, right?
Yeah, she claims that we were so drunk she doesn't remember any of it, but we were definitely together for 2 years.
Right. I actually was with you at the Emmys and we bumped into her. I remember that.
She was nice. She was lovely.
Yeah, she was one of my favorites. She was brilliant in The Sopranos. I mean, there's no question about that.
She and Jimmy both were brilliant.
So back to Doug. So he comes to Hollywood. He works with all the actors we've just talked about, and we now know what he thinks about them. Then one day he's 52 years old, and what happens?
He's going to work again. I don't know if he knows this, but he shot too many people. I mean, he shot at too many people. I mean, you got to understand that Val, Sean, Tom, they have people, and they have directors and producers that are their peer group and their friends and are dear to them. That if I'm sure that they know, that he wrote these things about them. And
well, the book isn't out yet; it's just been published, but they will, yeah.
Will eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
And, say Sean is told to reads it, he's going to tell 25 people, and he's not going to say nice things. I mean, I just don't know. If he thought this was going to look. He could have written the same book, and if he had just focused on other aspects of these people's on-set and some offset activities, there's no way that all Val did or all was talk gibberish. There's no way that all Tom Jane did was drink scotch, because he made a motion picture.
Right.
And it's like the first guy he runs down is Adam Baldwin, who's in this little independent movie he made with Lily Taylor, and he didn't know any of his lines, and Doug was really pissed off. But then he saw the movie, and he saw that Adam Baldwin was still wonderful in the movie, even though his lines were written all over the set on cardboard placards and stuff. I just don't. I really wish he hadn't said these things about these people, and now it's too late. He's going to have to live with the fallout.
Well, but it's funny. I mean, it's funny what he says. It's for you. It is, because you know them. I know a lot of them, but for the average person who just knows Hollywood, I mean, it's fascinating to them. Yeah. You got to get out of the bubble.
Well, the book's wonderful. I read it twice.
Right. So now he comes to LA, and then he meets Courtney Stodden, which I think that is probably the thing that most people have a problem with him, I think.
Well, she was 16 and he was 52. So.
Right. So he says, though, that at first he didn't know she was 16. He met her online, and she lived in Seattle, Washington. He lived in Los Angeles. And I think he was going to be her acting teacher, right? I think that's how it started. So what do you think about the way Hollywood treated him? Do you think there was some hypocrisy there? Because, he's not the first actor to be 20, 30 years younger than the person he's with. I mean, he's definitely not the first actor.
60 and dating a woman who's 35.
Right. So do you think there was him? Why do you think that people would I have a theory of why what happened to him with Courtney happened, but I'm interested in your theory. Why because you know Hollywood better than anybody else. Why do you think it happened?
Well, there's certain things out here like anywhere else that are taboo, and having sex or having a relationship, marrying and someone who's underage. I mean, she's 16 years old. It's just not something that in Hollywood. I mean, how do you cast that actor? I mean,
right.
I mean, America, it doesn't like that. I mean, I have two boys that just turned 15 July 23rd. That's 15. Now, if next year they told me they wanted to marry a 52-year-old actor from New York,
right?
They had some nice chats on email. I'd lose it. I mean, it's just.
I would like to offer the other side of the coin. When there's pictures in the book. In the book, there are photographs of when Doug first met Courtney.
She looks like she's 27.
Exactly. There is no way at 16, if you saw a picture and I said to you, how old is she? You would say 25, 26, 27.
Definitely.
She was very sexualized at 16. She was the way she dressed, her makeup. I think she was very sexualized. Do you think that's the parents? Do you think the parents, like if your boys are 15, let's say you had two 16-year-old girls, you have twin boys.
Yes,
A
sir.
lot of people don't know, by the way, that you have two very smart 15-year-old twin boys.
I have two very smart, athletically gifted, wonderful children
Yeah.
that are
And I've known them since they were like,
little boys. Since
yeah, I remember them in my house playing hide and seek.
yes.
And now they're 15 going on 16. But would you, let's say they were girls, would you allow your daughters to be sexualized like that at that age?
No, absolutely.
So I think the parents are not, I know Courtney's parents. I mean, they're not exactly,
Yeah, well, the mother seems like a really out there, theater mother. I mean, just
right. I think she lived vicariously through Courtney.
right.
She wanted to be famous. She could never be famous.
Right.
So she lived vicariously. Doug calls her the monster-in-law, which I think is a great name for her. He calls her the monster-in-law.
What happened to Courtney? Where is she?
So Courtney is a YouTube star today. I mean, if that's a thing, she's an influencer. But she just recently had a fling with Brian Austin Green from 90210. And I think he was having a fling with Courtney when he was with someone else. I don't know if that was his girlfriend. But then Courtney gets upset and tells the world that they had a fling. I know Courtney very, very well, and she's a very, very smart girl. I'm telling you, she's a very, very smart girl.
She is.
Don't be fooled by her looks. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's very intelligent. She's talented. She sings. She's an incredible actor. If she wanted to be an actor, she certainly could be. But that marriage, I think that's the thing that destroyed Doug. And being, representing him, it's very difficult to get away from that.
Well, when you would call people up to get them a meeting for something after everyone knew that she was underage, what was the reception like?
It depends. If it was, yourself, most of the casting directors in this town are female. The female casting directors were like no. Male casting directors, a lot of them, I mean, it was difficult, Tom. It was definitely very difficult. And I mean, I don't know really what else to say. I don't know how you crack that. I'm not sure how you crack that nut.
Did you talk to Doug about the implications of what this is going to mean to your career?
Yeah, I said to Doug, and he's said this on interviews. He did an interview for Today Australia recently, a couple of months just before COVID. I went with him. He was on the Today Show Australia. And one of the questions that the host asked him is, do you have any regrets and would you do it again? And it was, no, I don't have any regrets. And yes, I would. Well, that doesn't really do you any good,
He missed a chance there to maybe, apologize and say he was, swept away by her beauty and her worldliness and
intelligence. I mean, I'm very impressed with Courtney. She's out there a little bit, but she's a very smart girl. Anybody watching can just type in her name on the internet and you'll go to her YouTube channel. Now, there's 2 or 3 things in the book that he talks about. So when he met Courtney, that's when his life really started to spiral out of control. They moved to Palm Springs, which is where I live. So I know Palm Springs very well. And they rented a very big house, very expensive, and the money started to go.
That they couldn't afford.
And they couldn't afford to live there anymore. So they went back to LA. And work wasn't coming. They weren't getting any work. He certainly wasn't. And money ran out. So they came up with some schemes to make some money. And again, all this is in the book. This isn't me speaking out of school. This is all documented in the book in great detail. The first thing they concocted is that she was pregnant. So they announced that she was pregnant. And the paparazzi, the press went crazy. Courtney Stodden is pregnant, with Doug Hutchison, and everybody knew Doug and knew about their marriage. Well, that was not true. She wasn't pregnant. That was just a lie, and it was just to sort of make money with the press and to sort of get some notoriety and hopefully get some work. Well, now we have a problem because now the world thinks Courtney Stodden is pregnant, but there's no baby. So it wasn't like they said she was pregnant for a month and, we made a mistake. She wasn't pregnant. This went on for several months. So why don't you tell us how they dealt with that issue?
Well, since there was no baby and they had to, and it was too late for an abortion, and she doesn't need an abortion because there's no baby. So they miscarriage.
Right. She faked a miscarriage.
Yeah, they once again announced to the press.
And again, I just want to stress to anybody watching, this isn't Tom and I sitting here speaking out of turn. Everything that we're talking about is detailed in great detail in this book.
Far greater detail than we're talking about here.
Much greater detail. And Doug Hutchison wrote every word. Yeah. So now they have to fake a miscarriage.
Right.
And then what happened is a lot of sympathy. Now, again, in the book, Doug will say he never told any of his family about this miscarriage. She never told any. Everybody in the world thought that Courtney Stodden had lost a baby. So a lot of sympathy was showered towards them. And she even went out and bought one of those dolls that you can buy that weighs like a baby. They give them to teenage girls that are pregnant, just to show them what it's like. This baby cries and it has she had one. She shaved her head. She did a Britney Spears and she shaved her head. But now we have a problem because now what do we do now? So to this day, Courtney has not admitted that this is true. If you were to ask Courtney, she would say it isn't true. In fact, she wouldn't answer the question. But it's 100% true. I know for a fact because I was around in those days. Then we have the issue when she did a sex tape and they were going to give all the money to charity.
Why did they lie? They made $1 million in a week or something.
Right. And Courtney said $1 million was made and they gave it to him. Well, that wasn't true. I think the sex tape made $100 if we're lucky. And again, all this is documented. Now, here is the good side of this book. The reason Doug wrote this book is to get it off his chest. He wanted to come clean. He wanted to tell the world, this is what I did, and I'm not proud of it. And now he and Courtney are divorced. They got divorced in January of this year. He's living in Detroit. She's living in Los Angeles. But, he wanted to, he's found God. I mean, he's a religious man. And he's cleansing himself. Now, I think there's something to be said for that. What do you think about that?
He's also a Trumper, which is...
Well, we shouldn't really get into politics because that's the quickest way for people to pull the plug. Politics is very, very decisive today. But yeah, he's definitely a Trump supporter. And Doug is known in Hollywood for being a conservative. But again, we shouldn't really get into the politics here. But what do you think about an actor who goes through all these problems, bears his soul the way Doug has in the book, which I think is very brave, to be quite honest with you? What do you think about that? I mean, you've been in similar situations. While you're telling us that, I'm going to go and get a copy of your book so I could show it. So why don't you tell the audience what you think about an actor bearing his soul? And I'm going to walk to my right and get a copy of your book.
I think there's I think it's an actor like coming clean about every single thing. I don't think that people really want that from their actors. I think there's a certain level of not knowing too much about the actors that you enjoy, and I think it's a mistake to tell the public at large, the greater public at large, that you're that to
So you think there's certain things that you need to keep tight and let the mystique of your fame stay out there?
There's just certain things you keep dark, and you don't want people to know everything about you, so they can still enjoy the mysterious part about you that makes you an actor.
Right. So you wrote your own biography, and here it is. Yeah. By some miracle, I made it out of here alive. What are some of the stories you wrote in here? This was actually this got into the New York Times bestseller list. You and I went to New York. We did a fairly extensive book tour. You were on Howard Stern. You did a lot of very big national media for your book.
It was fun.
Your stories were not the same as Doug's. Yours were, they were more, they were honest, though. You were very honest in the book, I think, about you were up and then down and then up and then down. I mean, you're very honest in that. I see. Well, listen, Tom, we have about 7 or 8 minutes left before we lose.
Well, I had problems. Real quick. The one thing was my problem were drugs. My problems weren't on-set problems. They weren't issues.
No, I will vouch there were never on-set problems, and you do not drink. Yeah. Contrary to what you read in the press. That I will do a trump, and that is fake news. You do not drink. I've known you 12 years. I have never seen you drink 1 drop of alcohol.
I've not had a drink since 91.
Yeah.
But in the book, I talked about how, the cocaine grabbed me, and then later the crystal meth, and how it slowly at first, and then more rapidly, and then seemingly all at once, took everything I had.
Right.
So my problems were much more internal.
Right. So before we lose our television audience, how are you doing today? So why don't you tell us what you're up to and how you're doing, how your life is?
Well, as you know, I think
you only have a couple of minutes.
Okay. Well, as you know, I'm so clean and sober for the first time ever since I've known you, or since I've tried to get sober. And I'm going on 2 years now, and I'm a much different person now, aren't I, Charles? I'm much more easy.
Yeah, no, you're definitely. Well, you were sober for 4 weeks when you went to rehab once.
Yeah. But this is not going on 2 years.
No, it was 4 weeks, and then the minute you left rehab, you were no longer sober.
Right. So I'm sober now. I'm in good shape. I feel good. I just did a movie called Narco Sub in Houston. That's quite good, and
very good, yeah.
We didn't work together briefly we had some episodes on Shooter. The accident separated us, but we're back together, and
I mean, we're like lovers. We broke up for a year.
Yeah, but we're back together, and I'm looking.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt. Just want to let you know that we're going to be wrapping up the live broadcast on TV, but we'll still be able to continue on live streaming on Facebook, but we are now ending our live TV broadcast. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So the TV, are we still on? Are we still on camera?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still live. We're just transitioning. That was just kind of our outro for being on TV, and now we're back on.
Now we're on Facebook.
Now we're just on Facebook Facebook Live. So I will remove myself again and let you guys continue the conversation.
Okay.
So you're doing good?
Yes.
Yeah. And what's the future hold for Tom Sizemore?
I'm going to do Narco Sub 2. And there's a movie that, oddly enough, Sam Jackson's going to do that I got a call about called Forget About It. I was going to tell you about it. And that's coming together, and it's a good part. They want to give me the role if the coronavirus allows us. The future looks bright.
Yeah. So now we can go back to Doug's book, and now we can actually plug the book, because on television we couldn't actually plug it. So the cover price of the book is $20, but Brian Jagger, who we just saw, who runs Casting Calls America and has it's Casting Calls America is a series of websites around the country where if you're a producer, you have a role that you want to cast, you can put it on the website. And many actors from many cities, I think there's 27 cities, log on. And it's a great way, actually. It's a great service for actors, especially when you're not in Los Angeles or in New York, when you're in Phoenix or you're in Las Vegas or you're in Boise, Idaho, or wherever the websites are. So what we've done is the cover price of the book is $20, but we've made it just exactly half, $10. And at the end of this, Brian will put up a link where anybody watching can actually just click on that and buy the book, and you get it for half price. So I don't know, Brian, if we have any questions, or should we just keep talking?
Brian?
Yeah, no, sorry. We definitely have some questions. I'm just pulling up the link for you so we can put that up here for everybody. But I do have a few questions from some folks that have asked on Facebook, and so I'll throw those up on screen for you now. I think one of the questions was, and I thought was a good question, was why isn't Doug part of the conversation?
That's actually a very good question. When the book came out, Doug was sort of involved. He was going to promote the book. And I'm going to speak personally here. This is me speaking, not Tom. I think Doug decided to walk away from the book. I don't really understand why 100%. I don't know if after the fact he thought to himself, you know what, maybe this is a little hot for me. Maybe I am going to be asked some questions that I don't really want to answer. I'm not really sure. It was disappointing to me for sure, because, you know, now we have the book and Doug really should be part of it. He did a couple of interviews. He did Today, Australia. He did a very big interview with Fox Entertainment. But Courtney attacked. Courtney came out and sort of put her own spin of the marriage. And I think that shocked Doug a little bit. And, you know, will he come back? I think he will. This is in the last 6 weeks that this happened. And we actually had a scheduled discussion just like this right here, exactly where we are with Doug. And, you know, if Doug does see this, I think Doug should come back and he should talk about the book. You know, he wrote it. He's not ashamed of it. He has no regrets. And you know, it'd be great if he was here, I
think it's a shame he's not here also. And I also think it's a shame if Doug thinks he's ruined his career. But even though I think he went too far with certain things, I think he can still be forgiven. I mean, if he's interested in that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he has anything to be forgiven for, to be honest. You know, what he says about the actors he's worked with, that's his business. You know, the only person that needs to forgive him for that is the person he's talking about. I don't really think he needs to be forgiven for his relationship with Courtney. You know, it was legal. It's not like in the state of Washington, it is legal to marry a 16-year-old. Now, whether it's morally right, that's another story. But in the eyes of the law, it's legal. I think people need to also understand that his marriage lasted 6 years. And I think the reason that it didn't last was the pressures of the marriage, financial pressures, professional pressures. So I'm not sure that he needs to be forgiven, but I understand what you mean. Any other questions, Brian?
Any advice for an aspiring author?
Well, it depends on the genre of the book. If you're writing a fiction book, you're going to have a lot of competition. There's a lot of fiction writers out there. If you're writing a biography, you know, that's a lot easier. If you're writing a nonfiction book, it really depends. You know, I think being a writer is a tough gig. It's very difficult to get a book published. Publishing has changed. There was the days of when Tom got this book, when Tom published this book and I negotiated the deal, Tom did very well with his book. He got a very nice advance. The way we publish books, we don't give advances, but we partner with the author. So you give us the manuscript, we bring it to the public, we bring it to life, and then we share in the profits with the author. So the only advice is you have to stick with it. Writing is definitely a tough gig, and you just have to stick with it. And it just depends on the genre of the book. If I knew the genre of the question, I could answer that a little better. I have to put my glasses on to read the questions.
Don't have another question at the moment, so I have put up there that if anybody has any more questions, that they should make a comment right now. But I think something you had mentioned earlier, Charles, that Doug's book is coming available. So, but it is available to order on the link.
We have the book. The book was actually scheduled for release on March 10th. And we received the books from the printer the very day that the governor of California locked everybody down.
That was March 11th.
That very day the book arrived. And we pushed the date a couple of times, but now August 10th for sure, the book is, and the book has been available. Anybody that wants to buy the book can buy the book right now. Either with us, like if you buy it directly with the link that we just gave you for your group, Brian, it's $10. If you go to Amazon, it's $19.99.
Charles,
local bookstore, it's $20.
Charles,
yeah.
What happened to Doug's? I still want to teach. I still want to start a class. And did it ever get off the ground?
Again, he came and we were going to do. It's called The Art of Stillness, but again, 2 weeks before COVID. Like literally 2 weeks before. And in fact, we did an event with Brian's group, Sacramento Casting, which is one of your bigger groups, right, Brian? Sac Casting. And we had an event here.
Yeah, that's our very first site.
Right. And nobody can see where I am, but I'm in our offices, and we have very large offices, 4,000 square feet. And we did a very nice event here. Brian's partner was here from Sac Casting, and we had, I would say, 60, 70, 80 people. And Doug was going to do his acting classes right after that. But then, COVID has been very, very destructive on many, many, many levels. And I mean, we are, I mean, some people very bad. The film, as you know, Tom, the film business has been non-existent since March 10th.
At a standstill.
Yeah.
There were a couple movies that started that shut down.
Right. I was telling someone today, I was at a shoot and we were talking. And Tom, when I started looking at contracts, and I would get your contracts, and then there was always the out from the producers. They always had an out. And it would be an act of war, an act of God, riots, and a pandemic. And I have to say, I never understood the pandemic one. I always thought, what the hell is a pandemic? And what does that mean? But now I certainly understand why the pandemic clause is in all these contracts, because it's just shuts everything down.
Congratulations on all of your hard work. What was your favorite movie to work on? Hi, Mr. Skyberg. My very favorite, it's kind of a tie between Black Hawk Down, Saving Private Ryan, and Natural Born Killers, and Heat. That's 4. I know it's not. They were all really wonderful scripts, wonderful directors, wonderful co-star actors, and I had a wonderful time on all 4 of those movies. I also really love doing a movie called Last Lullaby, a little independent movie, and a TV show I did with Michael Mann called Robbery Homicide Division. I love working, and but those 4 movies are my 4 were by far and away my 4 favorites.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think your best work was? If you were to put one movie or television show, but one movie that you say, this is my best work, what do you think it is?
Saving Private Ryan, Natural Born Killers, Black Hawk.
But that's like 3 or 4. Can you pin it down to one?
Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, that was your best work. Yeah.
Over the course of, It was subtle. It was. I was there. I was in it. It was my best.
Right. No, Saving Private Ryan is a great movie. A little violent, but a great movie.
How would Doug feel, Tom and Charles, having this? I don't think he. I don't
think he would mind. Doug is he's a very out there guy. I'm sure Doug knows. He may even be watching. He would not. Listen, Tom and I, when you manage actors are very complicated people. This is something I've learned. Actors put themselves out there. The more famous they become, they're very complicated, complex human beings. When you work with them as closely as I do, with Tom and with Doug and other people, it really is, it's like a relationship. You're like lovers. You fight. And Tom and I have had some pretty big fights. But it's very, you're very close to that person. And it's very difficult to extract yourself from that person. So, Doug and I right now are where Tom and I have been. I have no doubt that one day we'll be friends and we'll be back. And in fact, we're very close to that now. So what would he say? I think he would engage in this conversation. And, Doug is a very articulate person. He's a very smart guy and he's very articulate. He would tell us, he would agree with everything because it's in the book, but he would tell us his point of view. And it would be a different point of view. I'm sure that how we've discussed it, but he would tell us his point of view.
Perfect actor, by the way, Charles.
So
always. Doug is.
So have some more questions coming in, but want to jump in with a question that I had for both of you guys, which is how much, and Tom, this is a lot for you as well, and Charles for Doug, how much of the culture of Hollywood do you think, or of the industry, impacted what has happened negatively in your personal lives? And Charles for Doug's personal life, and Tom for you, and how much of kind of the underbelly, quote unquote, do you think has made it an impact on negatively as a person? And is it, kind of to the question that Charles was referencing that Doug was asked earlier, would you do it all over again, knowing some of the pains?
Go ahead, Charles.
I'm going to speak as an outsider. So I'm not an actor. I'm not famous. I've never been famous. But I've been around it. And a lot of it thanks to Tom. I mean, when I got into this industry, I have met a lot of very iconic actors because Tom knows everybody and everybody knows Tom. As I said earlier, I always say to people, do not, people go, oh my God, I love Johnny Depp. Now, I've met Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp is a very introverted guy. If you would meet him, it's not what you think. And a lot of actors are like that. I think the pressure of being famous, I can't imagine being famous. I managed Cloris Leachman for many years, and Cloris Leachman is a very well-known personality. And you'd be sitting in a restaurant, and we'd be in a business meeting, and even with Tom, you're sitting, and all of a sudden, someone just walk up to the table. Oh, I don't mean to interrupt, but can I have a photo? Or I don't mean to interrupt, but can I? Or you're walking through an airport, and people just walk right up to you and take pictures. That's great. A lot of actors, they want to be famous. But it definitely has an effect on you after a while that you have no privacy. If Tom, Tom's had his scrapes. Tom could walk down the street. Someone could push Tom for no reason whatsoever. And Tom pushes them back. I guarantee you the story will be that Tom Sizemore assaulted, beat someone up. So I think that's the impact of that. The negative impact is, I think, fame. And the fact that, you're very complicated, Tom. Actors are very complicated. And I've worked in theater as well. And movie actors are a little more complicated than theater actors. But it's, I don't know what you think. What do you think?
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, the job's so revealing. I mean, just wanting to be starting on a career and going in front of all these casting directors and being essentially dismissed, and then all of a sudden, well, it was like all of a sudden, I'm no longer being dismissed. I'm being loved, and what was before, no, we don't want it. Now they want it all the time. The abrupt, the abruptness of that can mess with someone, and it did with me. I mean, I went from having no money to having several $1 million. I mean, I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't. No one. There's nothing to get you ready for that.
No.
And I was from such, a modest, middle class background, but no one made that.
I actually think that is a lot of the problems. Justin Bieber, when he had all his problems many years ago, when the whole egg throwing situation where he threw eggs at people's houses, and I mean, he'll tell you now that it was too much money too quick. And I think you touched on it. And I know, Tom, listen, you come from a middle class family in Detroit, Michigan. All of a sudden you're in Hollywood, you're earning $1 million a movie. And, after your commissions and everything, you got 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 cash. I mean, it's tough. I mean, and I know it's going to sound terrible to people watching because everybody wants money, but everybody wants something from you. Everybody wants, you get a lot of friends real fast. And then you realize that these people are not your friends. They're just with you because they think you have something you can give them.
The constant request for people borrowing money wore me out.
Right.
Too much.
And then you turn to drugs and you turn to alcohol, and
better for me.
And it spirals out of control from there.
It would have been better for me had it been a more gradual ascent. In retrospect,
right.
I'm sure I would have been.
Let's not make it like it's a terrible life. It's a great life, Tom,
But I would change some things if I had to do over again.
Yeah, we've lost your picture, Tom. I don't know what's happened to your phone.
I do have some regrets. What happened to my picture?
I don't know, but we can hear you.
It just disappeared.
Yeah.
I don't know where the picture went. We still hear you fine, but the picture has disappeared.
What should I?
It's probably better we don't see you anyway.
Hang on, let me do them.
Well, now I lost them all together, but I think this is the most important question that we can have him answer when he comes back. Is this question from the
this is actually a very important question.
Right. This is a very important question, Tom, that is being asked by some Ricky.
Is Tom back?
I'm right here.
Tom's back on. Here's the question, Tom. It's the most important question you're ever going to answer.
How did I feel, or what do I remember about it?
Oh. Well, let's read the question. Tom,
what did you think?
What did you think of your time working with the famed director Ricky Borba for The Broken String Sizzle in November?
I had a great time, and I hope that we do that. I hope that movie or TV show comes.
And what did you think about this famed director, Ricky Borba? What did you think about him?
He has the talent to become a truly famed director.
There you go. There you go, Ricky Borba. That's for you, Tom.
Don't. No, Josh. If it's something that I've always thought that acting is a calling. If it's something you can't live without, if you think your life is going to be less full, you're going to be less of the person that you dream yourself to be, then go ahead and do it. But if you can see that if there's something else that you could do that you would get the same, be as connected to and passionate with, then do that other thing. Because acting.
One thing I'll say, and now I'm in Sacramento. I run the film office here in Sacramento. I think it's very difficult to be I've got to be careful how I say it. It's very difficult to be an actor, I think, unless you're in Los Angeles or you're in New York. And I know actors here who say, you know, will you represent me? And I say, well, okay, well, what if you get an audition in LA? You know, they'll tell you they want to see you on Wednesday, but you'll get the call on Monday. And on Monday, they'll say, we want you to see you on Wednesday. Oh, well, I'll just go to LA. Okay. And then what if the following week, the same thing happens, and the week after? It's a tough gig. You know, acting is tough.
Not for sissies.
It definitely isn't that, for sure. So Doug Hutchison, Cloris Leachman. I mean, I could tell you some stories about Cloris Leachman. I've managed Robert Lasado. If you'd have to look him up.
Bob's very difficult.
Yeah, Britt Eklund. Britt Eklund is more European. She lives in London, where she lives here. She was married to Peter Sellers, and she was married to Rod Stewart. Her popularity is more in Europe. Tom, I manage Heidi Fleiss, who Tom knows very well, and some others. But what was the question? How are they difficult? Was that the question, Tom? No.
You have had people who've had turbulent careers.
I mean, all the above. in different ways. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. Cloris is a sweetheart, but Cloris is a little nuts, but nuts in a good way. She's nuts in a good way. She's funny nuts, but she just doesn't take any nonsense from anybody. Cloris is obviously best known for Young Frankenstein, and then on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and her last big show was Raising Hope.
Well, thank you, Josh. Then I don't know where you live, but you need to make arrangements to move to Los Angeles or New York. You're welcome. My pleasure. Charles's pleasure too.
Yeah, my pleasure too. Both of our pleasures. So what's next for you, Tom?
This actually went really well. I was really nervous.
Yeah.
I'm always nervous to do this kind of
stuff. Let's just wrap up the book, because that's what we're here for, to talk about this book. So if you were giving this book a review, Tom, you're a book reader. Now, here's another thing. A lot of people don't know about Tom Sizemore, but I'm going to tell you. If I was to say that Tom read 2 books a week, I don't think I'd be wrong. Right, Tom? You're a voracious reader.
Yeah, I read everything. I read fiction mainly, but I read a lot of biographies. Yeah,
I remember having many arguments with you when, money was, you went through your money problem days, and I would go to a bookstore with you, and you'd walk around the bookstore, and I'll have one of everything. And I'd say, Tom, this is going to cost a lot of money. No. Charles, I read them all. I read every single one. And I say, Tom, are you sure you're going to? Yeah, Charles, I read them. And you do. I can attest to that. So you would be very qualified to give a book review. What would your review of this book be? In a nutshell.
A fast-paced, winning. You're not sure if it's a tongue-in-cheek romp through our most recent Hollywood of Oliver Stone, Nicolas Cage, Gary Oldman, Mel Gibson, Tom Sizemore, Michael Mann, from 85 to 2005, and you get to see some underbelly of this great town, and see a young man's dreams come true, and then unfortunately get shattered to a certain degree under the weight of his own passion.
Maybe I should just leave my glasses on.
Well, Angel's pretty.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. What did I just say? Oh, I was reviewing the book. I would recommend it to people. It's not going to change your life, but if you're looking to kill a couple evenings or kill a long night.
Or if you're interested in Hollywood. It's definitely behind the scenes of Hollywood, for sure.
For sure, buy the book.
Yeah. And everybody on Brian's network gets it for half price with the link that Brian is going to put up.
Yeah, the link is on the Facebook comments, and then we'll make sure it's included in the replays later and information later. But I just wanted to thank both of you guys for coming on. I know that Tom, obviously, thank you so much for your time and sharing with us. And a lot of our audience are actors or aspiring actors, and hearing from someone who's. And I think one of the reasons that this was important for us was, especially since we specialize in kind of helping connect actors to opportunities outside of LA and New York. But obviously, like to your point, the interest is we want to get to LA or New York eventually, and hopefully have that goal. But I think that it's good to remind people that there's a negative side, that there's, it's not like you jokingly, but also tongue in cheek responded to the question about, what advice do you give for somebody getting into it? Don't. I think that too needs to be heard for people that are looking at doing this more, and to know that these pressures, and there is a negative side. There is this culture that can be harmful.
You just got to really love it to go through the ups and downs. They just happen.
But it's also a great life, Tom.
It's a great life.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. It's fast paced. Yeah. It's challenging.
If you can,
meet great people.
You can get around it and get into the become part of this movie making community. Even then, it's still challenging, but it's a wonderful life. I wouldn't change it for anything. My dream, what I've accomplished is eclipsed what I dreamed it would be when I first started.
So now this is kind of an interesting question. What if somebody wants Tom to autograph Doug's book?
Sure.
Sure. Do that.
Yeah, that wouldn't be difficult.
Okay.
I have connection.
All right. All right. So we'll make sure that anybody who wants
if anybody buys the book and wants that, make sure you notate that, because it'll just come to us electronically and we'll just ship the book. So just notate that you'd want Tom to sign it, and I'll make sure he does. No charge, right, Tom?
No charge. No charge. Not in these challenging times.
Well, unless either of you have anything, I just want to thank you both for coming on and being so open to have this conversation about kind of the underbelly and negative side and some of the drama and your clients' worlds, Charles, Tom, your world, and we look forward to seeing you on screen and seeing what's coming up next.
Yeah, and we thank you for the opportunity, for sure. We couldn't have done it. We could not have done it without Brian. I'll tell you that.
I really enjoyed myself. It was great. I look forward to doing it again. Okay, guys.
Great.
All right.
Thank you both, guys.
All righty.
Bye-bye.